are fairly close, so I really appreciate you coming out and listening to us. And if you saw my email, we'll try to make this exciting and not put anybody to sleep and talk about boring art rhetoric. But first, I got to introduce my help over here, everybody that participated with me. We have Teresa Haag. She is the artist on this side. Heather Davis is in here. She's busy. And then we have Paul Downie. He's over there. And we have Rhoda Kahler over there. And he does the title work. Oh, yeah, she's there. Her title work is right there. And my daughter Mia, she's right there. And her artwork is over there. I guess I can tell you a little bit quick about the show, and then you can talk to the other artists, and it's a lot more entertaining. Lily Gaylor asked me a year ago to do a show at the Oxford Art Alliance, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's a year away, not a problem. And then about 2 months from October, they called and said, okay, so are you doing the show? It's going to be Schaller and Friends. And I was like, oh, crap, what am I going to do? And then I saw Rhoda Kahler and John Baker's show at Mala Gallery, and it sparked this whole idea. I'm like, I want to do a collaboration. I've worked with other artists before doing a collaborative work, but I really wanted to. It was very self-fulfilling. I wanted to push myself, and I wanted to work with artists I really liked and really respected, and kind of go out of my norm. Working with Rhoda on ceramics. I don't do 3D art, and after this, I don't think I will do 3D art because there's like, you have to look all around it, and I'm just good for one focal point. Working with Teresa, I always loved her artwork. There's just this urban quality to it. I met Paul 2 years ago, and he's just a cool guy, cool vibe, and I thought that was really pushing it, his artwork and my artwork, but I think we made it work. It was fun working with him and really easygoing. And Heather, I love her work. I love her greens. I really just wanted to basically figure out how she did her greens, so if I could work on one of her paintings. And her bright colors. And a realist too. It was kind of like, do I kind of go? And then I wanted to work with Mia because it's my daughter, and it was really cool because she was blossoming, and she did the studio tour, and it was just a cool experience to kind of work with her. So that's how we got the show, Family and Friends. If you're asking how I got the prices, because maybe you guys are interested in buying something, what we did, Teresa's husband did a great Excel spreadsheet. We took our price for that size, cut it in half, and added them together. So that's how we came up with prices for everybody's artwork. So say for Teresa's piece, a 24 by 24 is a normal size for her. She charges X amount, I charge X amount. We put it together in this little spreadsheet, and it came up with a price. So I do pricing lectures. I figured that was the fairest way to do it. All right, good? Now what do you want us to do? Okay. Okay. So, like I said, I did a collaboration with some other artists before. We did 1 + 1 + 1, which was 3 artists, which was a real lot of artists to work together. It's a mix. Also, I wanted to pick people that didn't have big egos. I've worked with some artists that had really big egos, and as soon as you like encroach a little bit onto their piece, they get all mad and like, you can't, and like, that's the idea of collaboration. We have to work together. So the rules were, you start a piece, you hand it off to the artist, they add to it, you finish it. So it just went around once. Teresa and I did 2 pieces together, and we can come down here. Come on down. I started this piece. I had the Lone Ranger, All-American, and Good Times. I really wanted to throw her a curveball with this one. It was yellow, and there was the Beatles behind here. There was ice all in fluorescent orange. It was really cool. And she just hated it and painted it over, but she can tell you about all that thing. And this one, she handed me the Liberty Building.
Yes, Liberty One.
Liberty One, and I added that, and here she handed this to me, and then I added that. So she's going to tell you about her artwork.
Oh. Hello. So I'm Teresa Haag. Thanks for being here tonight. When Jeff first approached me about the concept of doing this, I was really nervous because Jeff has always been this amazing artist who I've looked up to, and one day maybe I'll be like Jeff Schaller, and so I was really humbled when he asked me, and then I was really, really terrified. And so I procrastinated, and I'm like, what are we going to do? How is this going to work? And finally he's like, here, just take the pieces and just do something. So I just finally said, okay, well, let's just dive right in. So the first piece that I worked with on him was this piece. Like he said, he just handed me a silk screen of the Lone Ranger and this imagery in here, and I sort of simmered over it over a few days and thought, okay, I don't know what to do, but the All-American triggered the George Washington Bridge, which I had just come back over a couple days before, and so that's why I layered the GW in the background, and then it just took shape. He already mentioned this piece here with the crazy fluorescent. I just couldn't make it work. I spent more time on this darn painting than anything else, like days and days trying to make this work. And I wish I would have taken photos of the different iterations because it would have been very interesting. But in the end, I think that this piece works the best. I really love it.
It's one of those pieces that I wanted to add a lot or give it back, and then it was kind of like, just stop and let the piece speak for itself instead of trying to add more stuff to it.
Absolutely. He sent me the photo of it once he did the final with the woman, and I don't remember where I was with a friend, and I was like, yes, this is it. This is so good. So I love that one. And then the other two, it's just a lot of play and trying to go out of my comfort zone, trying to let his work shine and figure out ways to make it work. It was like a puzzle, and it was a lot of fun. So thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Tell about your work. What do you think?
Oh, so normally I paint large-scale cityscapes. Last night I was up on a mural wall until 4 a.m. working on a new mural. But really, my love is showing a snapshot of an everyday scene that you might not look at and giving it a second look or second opportunity to shine through, and the ability to insert yourself into the piece. So that's what I love to do. And for me, it's always this gut feeling. Like when I was driving here, there was a barn, which I know everyone's like, really, a barn? Never painted a barn, but there was a barn, and I just thought, oh, I've got to paint this. So I stopped and took some photos, and so maybe next there'll be a barn coming out of me. So that's it. Thank you very much.
I'll just ad-lib for Heather over here since she's not here. Yeah, she said she was really nervous to do this too, but I don't know why. So I started the Tide one with her, and she started and gave me the covered bridge. A little bit about this one. It's like she saw it, and that's a great thing about doing these together. You have these conversations with the artwork and not really with the artist. So she was like, oh, I got to put a baseball player there. And she did a great job of leaving some of the yellows through the Tide and everything. And I was like, she gave it back to me like, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. What am I going to do with it? I didn't want to paint on it. And this is where that whole, okay, do I have to add something that looks like me on it? And I just changed the color of the dots actually. And that was it. And then whited out the D. And I was kind of like, that's it. That's kind of good. Let that shine. When she handed me this one, my obvious reaction was like, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. Those are the greens and the reds that I love about her work. I'm just going to paint a cow in front of it. And it kind of seemed really obvious. I'm like, I wanted to push myself a little further. So I said, okay, let's turn this painting to what I like about her work. And it's that bright red and stuff like that. So I took out my hideous orange again that Teresa didn't like, and I put it on her painting. And so I painted the absolutely fabulous, and I painted the cardinal, and I gave it back to her, and she just kind of continued some of the branches and added some of that stuff to it. It ended up being, I think both of them fairly successful, just because it was about color, and then she brought it around compositionally. It lacked a little bit, and then she brought it in through that.
My main background in painting is large-scale mural painting. Most of my adult career life had been spent doing that before. I now run an art center in Delaware County. And contrary to popular belief, I'm really not a laid-back guy at all. Everyone always, luckily I portray that to people, right? And it comes through in my work. It's all very tight, and I don't blend paint on surfaces generally. And so, those things are obviously in my work. I'm pretty preoccupied with music, which is another big part of my life. But to segue into the collaborative pieces, and I know Jeff will say a few things about that. As Jeff mentioned, we've gotten to know each other the past couple of years through studio tour and various things where we've overlapped with the art center where I work. And I've enjoyed becoming friends with him. And the thing that I haven't even told you this yet, but the thing that to me was the greatest part of collaborating on the paintings was that it took me out of my very planned sort of approach to making paintings, and got me to return to a little bit of play in art. And I feel like play is a big percentage of growth in art, and that's not my idea. So I read it somewhere in graduate school, and I don't remember who wrote it, but I often do think about that with different artists. I meet a lot of artists in my administrative career, and some of the ones that I notice really progress a lot over the years and grow a lot and reinvent themselves. I notice that it happens because they're willing to be playful and they're willing to explore. So thanks to Jeff for giving me the opportunity to return to that a little bit. And should I give this back to you? You can talk more about the collaborative pieces.
You can say what you started.
So we started. I started this piece, which was basically the striped background, and it said soul jazz here. And Jeff started this piece with the striped background and some collage pieces on there. It was sort of interesting that we had, actually in the startings, we had a lot of similarities. And then you want to say where we took it from there?
Oh, yeah. When I got this piece, it was a total nightmare. I had no idea what to do with it. It was so linear, and then it was like, okay, well, this is going to test our relationship. I just took white and painted it over. I'm like, okay, hope he's okay with that. And then I'm just kind of like, my train of thought is very literal. It was like soul. I'm like, oh, soul, southern comfort, booze. Oh, there I am. And so I had a vintage ad of from the 70s of this guy and girl sitting there over by a fire with some Southern Comfort in their hand, and I silkscreened Southern Comfort here, and I let it sit, and I hated it. It didn't work, so I put more white paint on it, and then I just painted Southern Comfort in a glass and put Good Times on it. I still wanted to kind of go, okay, do something with it, and he just did small things like put that on there, colored that in, and I think you put that circle on.
Yeah, so we both drove 40 minutes to meet so that I could spend 15 minutes finishing the painting at home.
And then I drove 40 minutes to go pick it up. But then I think it was successful. He showed me the picture of it. I was kind of like, okay. It was that. I think Teresa had that same feeling. It was like, okay, it's done. It's like, here you go. Do something with it. Don't screw it up. Okay, make it good. Okay, good. You did it. This one too, he gave it back to me. It had sweet songs on it. It really didn't need much. I just wanted that little pop and bring out the full. So I just added a little Sugar Daddy logo to it, and that was it. It actually went this way, and there was a bathing suit back there and stuff, and he brought out the pinks on it. So it was really fun to work with him. Like you said too, I think it's fun, and it just pushes you. I don't know, that's what I want to talk about later with the artist, is having that kind of style and that trademark, and what do you put on something, and if that's your fingerprint, that it's your style. So somebody goes, oh, that's Paul and Jeff, and that's Teresa and Jeff. What part is what part? And as growing as an artist, it made me look back at my career and go, okay, what am I known for? What if I put on this is my signature piece. So next, I worked with Rhoda. I was very excited to work with Rhoda. Oh, sorry. Yeah. You coming up here? Okay. I actually worked with Rhoda before at a show in Westchester, and we did a collaboration piece. So I was excited to work with Rhoda until I got the pieces and realized she worked in clay, and there's like only 4 colors you work with clay. The palette was very limited. I know, your palette was very limited. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is not with my palette. But I think it was fairly successful. Pretty much successful. So Rhoda gave me, this was the only one that I didn't give her something to do. She gave me all the work to do. So she gave me this orb and that orb. And then she's known for her tile pieces. So she gave me that and she gave me that. And then I asked for the boxes because I didn't know what the heck to do with them. So here I put Starry Night on the background with the transfer, cut this out, and then she came, and then that, and I gave it back to her. She put the line around it and painted that yellow. Yeah, or did I paint that yellow? Yeah. And I love the line. It's just that little subtle thing. She like picked it up and was like, oh, this needs a line. I'm like, oh, aren't you going to look at it a little bit, critique it a little bit? Nope, this needs a line. And then this one, she gave me, and I did the gold. Here, why don't you come up here? And I glued it.
Can we hang it back up?
This one was a nightmare. I went back and forth with this. I wanted to I saw the city, and I was like, oh, I'm going to put King Kong. So there's a King Kong background back here, and then that didn't work. And I'm like, oh, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. And that's over here, and that didn't work. And that was back to cocktails. That works. Cocktails in city, so that's how I came up with this. And I put gold on here. Again, it was just forcing yourself to add something to it, and figure it out. And I think that was the most fun about this project, personally for me, goes back to the elements of composition, color, and figuring stuff out.
Yeah, identity.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, when I gave him the cityscapes, because Jeff had told me, I don't think I need this microphone. Do I need this?
Yeah.
Oh, I do. Okay, sorry. So when I gave him the cityscapes, he said, make sure it looks like you. Don't try to, because I've done collaborations before, Darcy Goldberg, and we planned the whole show, a black and white show, and then with John Baker, and we planned the whole show, and I worked with them in the studio. So it was really different for me because with Darcy, she worked at my studio, and John, with the collaboration with John, I worked in his studio. So I got to feel both sides of it. And then with Jeff, it was a totally different collaboration because we worked in our own studios and then kind of, met in the middle and transferred pieces over. But he said, I want it to look like your work. So I left the sky. I love that he did this up here. I left the sky empty here and the ground empty here. So I was kind of hoping he'd pour fuchsia paint on it or something from a ladder because I never used, I do have 4 colors that I use. So I was kind of thrilled that he put the decal on the back there. But I think the sculptures, I was really excited to give you because the sculptures, the one back here, this is it superhero?
Yeah, I think so.
Because when I do these balloon sculptures, I do these over balloons because I thought I could make it really easy for Jeff and give him a nice big flat slab sculpture to work on, but no, let's challenge him. So these are ripped clay pieces, and I had glazed certain sections, and then he put these awesome decals and did the fuchsia paint, and I was so excited to see my sculpture just totally in drag, just it was just great. I loved it. I was so excited. I feel like this is amazing. Yeah. I know you didn't like working on it, but I'm
into painting, so I kind of put it down, and then you move, and you're like, oh crap, it needs another focal point. Oh crap, it needs another focal point. You're like, where do you stop? You have to add something to it. And then I was kind of like, I got to deliver the work, so let's stop. And then just taking it as sculpture. and kind of being like, okay, it's the form, and then you walk around it. I admire you sculptors there. It's tough. But I think they were fun. It was really successful.
Yeah, I loved it.
So,
I was very excited to see it.
yeah. Next, work on. Oh yeah, you didn't talk about your work.
Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. Just a plug, I have a show with Mitch opening up October 6th. Mitch Lyons is in the house over there. So this is actually one of the collaboration pieces I did with Darcy. And Darcy's a black and white. Oh, sorry. You probably didn't know that was there. No, I just hit it there. No. This was she's a black and white photographer, so I had done black and white fingerprints for the whole show, or was just black and white work for the whole show. So I kind of transferred from color glazing with color. My typical work is cityscapes. I think probably what I'm most known for is the alphabet cityscapes, and I use found objects and printing press letters to stamp into the buildings, and then I use a lot of oxides and glass and found objects. So a lot of my objects that you'll see in here are regular household objects that I use to create the design or the city. So these little guys, this is the similar like Matchbox cars, Philadelphia printing block letters. And down here, this is kind of my new work coming out, very kind of landscape, textural, very subtle and minimalistic, kind of letting the clay speak for itself rather than the found objects. So I think that's good. All right.
All right, come on up. Next was my pride and joy. I got to work with my fabulous daughter, my fabulous blue-eyed daughter over here, my brown-eyed daughter's over there. To do this, she's been my studio assistant for 2 years now, and just watching her grow and paint. And she was in the studio tour, so I was kind of like, all right, let's change this to family and friends. And so we kind of had the, cheated a little bit because we could work together. We were in the same studio. I didn't know you wanted to work with me, Rhoda. We could have had you over for the studio. So I threw a curveball and gave her one of the largest pieces she ever worked on. And I gave her this board. And she started with the donut. And I added the coffee cup. With this one, I started this. I did the Velvet Underground, the Andy Warhol banana. I was kind of throwing her a bone there because she said she always wanted to paint a monkey. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to hook you up. It was a nice volley serve, and then she nailed it with the monkey. This one we kind of talked about. She's really well known for her donuts at the age of 16. She's like, selling donuts out crazy. So I painted a picture of Mom. She painted the donut on top after I gave it back to her. And then I came back and added dreams. It was one of those things where we said, okay, it kind of needs something else here. And I gave her the background for this, and she painted the unicorn floaty. I think this probably was the most difficult one because she gave me that, and I painted this later at night. And I did it, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then I put it up on Instagram and Facebook, and that was a big mistake because all of a sudden that was like instant feedback. Everybody was like, I love it. And we're like, oh, do we touch it or do we keep? And people are like, how much is it? And I'm like, crap, we don't touch it. Let's sell it. So we sat there and was like, okay, what do we do? And I sat in the studio for about a week, and then I silkscreened Delicious on there really, really light. So I felt like I added something to it. We're like, okay, we can call this complete. So now it's Mia, and she's going to talk about her work.
Hello, I'm Mia Schaller. I paint in, acrylic, as you can see. And I really like to paint just very simple pictures of, so far, animals and food. And I just really have fun in, making a little quirky, popping out of the side. Or I really just like to focus on, making people kind of smile when they look at the art. And, sometimes I like to add in quirky little names, like the deer over there is called John, so John Deere. And I just really like painting. I'm just starting, so then it was cool. My dad came over. He's like, "So Mia, would you like to do a show with us?" I was like, with you guys? I don't know. He's like, we're gonna do a collaboration show. It'll be totally fine. It'll be great. I was like, all right, Dad. And so he gives me like a paint. He's like, all right, pin on here. I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was kind of nervous, and it was kind of weird. Like, here's my art, Mia. You're gonna paint on it. Like, don't mess it up. And his big phrase is, you can never mess up art. But, you know, I'm painting on my dad's piece of art. I was like, it's gotta be perfect. So I was a little nervous, but I had a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed doing this with my dad. So, yeah.
Cool. That's it. So now what do you want to do? Did we bore everybody's awake? You want to talk about like the process of collaboration if we all sit together or stand together, or do you have questions? All right. Well, come on, artists. Let's all stand over together so we can pass the mic or something. Go ahead, Rob.
When you all did the collaboration and you swapped paintings, did you all take them back to your own studios to work on, or did you ever work together in the same studio?
No, we all took them back. I don't know why. It was we drove 40 minutes. We worked together. She works in my studio. I don't know why. A time crunch, I guess, really, because we were all pretty busy working on other shows and stuff like that. I had to switch mediums. I'm usually doing caustic. So I did acrylic with her. You work in acrylic anyway. And then Rhoda, I was able to use acrylic and spray paint.
I think the idea of doing this collaboration is just fantastic. This has turned out really, really well.
Thanks.
Inspiring with your stuff, Rhoda, that you did with Jeff with 3D. And it's got such a cool look.
Yeah. I think everybody should do it. It's just, what's that?
I do think to answer your question, one-on-one and like in the studio back and forth is a different collaboration. This was fun because you kind of you get a little cynical in your studio, like, what should I do? What should I make Jeff do? You know, I know Jeff really well, and I was like, ooh, what, so this little demon on each side. I'm like, oh no, okay. And then, but I think working together in the studio and talking and like going back and forth and talking about an end product or an end vision, what do you want the piece to be, is different. This show is different because there's so many artists in the show, but it is kind of exciting, and you get to know that person so well, because you're, when you're in each other's studios too, you're, having lunch together. And, with John, we were always having a PBR or whiskey, oh, it's time for whiskey, in his studio. It was always fun. And that changed and altered things as well. But this was exciting. This was pretty fun. I'm happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
I don't know if I'd like to work in another person's studio, because I have all my stuff. It's like I know where everything is, and I have all my silk screens, and I have my paints, and I have all this imagery that I have. To go to someplace else, I think I'd feel. Actually, we did do that once. Were you there with Ellie? And we did that. We had to paint that plate for the Kennett Symphony. We went to this guy's house. I felt so like, oh my gosh, I got to do something here, and I don't have all my materials, and you're like forced to paint a plate, and you're like, ah. So I think, and then two pieces need to sit and rest, and I think that does in my work too. It was just like it had to sit there. I had to think about it and what to do. I think if we were sitting around waiting for that, we would have just been drinking.
I think you could consider it a plein air event. You got to take your stuff when you go outside to paint.
That's why I don't do that. Another reason I don't do plein air.
Well, I have a question for Rhoda. The idea of collaborations is a great idea. I thought about that. Have you considered doing collaboration all in greenware?
All in greenware?
Oh, yeah.
Like unfired? Well, Mitch, do you want to do that? Week at a time. October 6th is until, not fired. I think clay is at its most beautiful in greenware, to be honest with you. Sometimes I hate to fire it. It's so beautiful. Do you, Mitch? What do you think?
I like it when it's wet.
You like it when it's wet? Yeah, I'd say like a nice leather hard, so it still has a sheen. Not quite dry. That's such a fascinating question to do a greenware collaboration.
I work with a group, 5 of us that all work in clay. And part of the problem is coming up with an
That's fascinating. For those of you who don't know, greenware. Does anybody know what greenware is over here on this side of the room? Says the ceramic artist. So greenware is the time when you make the clay, it's drying and hasn't been fired yet. So it's this fragile state where all you need is one thing to roll into it or to touch it, or if it dries too quick, it cracks. And so greenware is this beautiful state, and when it hasn't entered the fire yet, it hasn't got fired. It is beautiful. I remember making pieces that I thought, oh gosh, I don't want to stick them in there. I'm just fine with it, just like this. And there are artists that do that. I think, Emily, an artist that does that. But fascinating. All right. Food for thought.
Yes. You want to talk about? Go ahead.
Jeff, did you pick the artist because they were challenging or because they were your friend?
I think I can call my friend still. Yeah, it was it was tough because I like a lot of artists. I'm friends with a lot of artists, but I don't want to work with a lot of the artists. It's a personality thing because I've done it with. Let's see, I've done this like 4 times. We actually had a show at Wallingford Art Association with Rob Mars. Yeah, Rob Mars, Peter, Melody Postuma. We all had this very same aesthetic. All using Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, and stuff like that. And the other artists I did, a couple of them had big egos and like cut the pieces or got upset if you painted on top of them. So I was kind of like, all right, let's keep this local. Before it was FedExing, we were FedExing everything around. So I guess that's one of the reasons why, too, I never really considered working in somebody else's studio because previously I've done it before. I think that kind of would be cool to have like you guys come over and grab the silk screens and make your own silk screens and stuff, and then we all go to Rhoda's and play with her clay and stuff like that. Yeah. So I kind of picked them and they were reliable because I had 2 months to get this done. That was important.
Were any of you ever really unhappy with what somebody else had done to your painting?
Go ahead.
So it was not that I was unhappy because when he gave me this crazy chaos, I don't think I said this earlier, but all of my pieces start with a layer of newspaper or maps or book pages because the chaos is something that's embedded in my process. It feels like the world and buzzing and things going on. And I like this idea of making my pieces like raining in the chaos and creating order out of it. So I was like, all right, this is cool. This is going to work. And then I just couldn't make it work. It was just so, your question was I upset or? No, it was took me out of my comfort zone, and for that, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, Paul's took me out of my comfort zone too. It was basically all painted. I'm like, what do I do now? So I think that was that, and because Rhoda also gave me hers, and it was like, okay, paint here. So it was fairly easy to know what to do. But then when Paul handed me his, I was like, oh, all right, what do I do?
Because I'm such an earth tone person. I work with dirt, greens and greens and browns and blues. And so I was hoping he would introduce something shocking to me, to the work. So he did. So I was pleased.
You could take that as an inferred answer, Jeff. I didn't get angry, but it's tough to anger me, especially with art, because that's why I paint in acrylic paint, because I want to be able to paint over it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But to Jeff's point, I felt like we didn't have to add that much each time.
No. I think that was the frustrating part about it.
But that might have driven you crazy.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, you just got to add, and that's where that ego thing comes back and forth. It's like, how much do you want it to be my painting, your painting?
Yeah.
And you just do it for the good of the painting. I think that's what I learned the most out of this whole process. Was control.
I was going to say the challenge with this was finding the inspiration to take the next step. Normally for me, that inspiration comes in the very beginning. I'm inspired before I paint. And in this case, you have to find the inspiration after the process has already been started. And it was such a different way of thinking through. But I've carried that through. Now I'm reassessing my pieces a little bit more, even after I've started. Is there something I can do differently to make these even more powerful at the end of the day? So it was good.
So,
Yep.
like emotionally, did this take you up and down further than you would have normally gone doing a painting? Like when you think about working on somebody else's work and putting that first mark down, was it a little bit more? Yeah.
No, you want me to go? You got something? No. Yeah, you don't want to screw it up. But then I always tell me, I'm like, you're making art. You can't screw it up. If you see some of the stuff out there, man, they already screwed it up. You can't really screw it up. I think the most frustrating piece was probably Rhoda, that dot one over there, that blue globe, because I just kept on feeling like I wanted to add to it and wanted to add to it. And it really took me out of my comfort zone because, again, it was 3D. That was probably the hardest. Working with Teresa was just so super simple. It was, well, like, I don't know, we just had that, oh, that's it. And there's so much, like, yeah, that Love More piece is, you know, without being cocky, I'm like, that's an awesome piece. It just worked. You get that thing, it's like, wow, it worked. And between two people, you go, wow, it worked. Actually, there's at least one out of all of ours, I think, was like, wow, that really worked. You have emotional attachment?
This is Jeff Schaller's work. Like, I had them lined up in my studio wall, staring at them with the ones he started, and I was like, I'm gonna paint on Jeff Schaller's paintings right now. I had a ton of fear going into it, making the first marks. But then once I made the first marks, I was good. I was like, all right, let's go. We're in it now.
No, you just forced me to do it.
I guess it was like a little nerve-wracking. I mean, like growing up in his studio, I was always like, careful, don't dent the corner there. And like now I had to paint on it. Like, okay. So I guess it was a little nerve-wracking, but after being like his assistant for 2 years, I kind of got the hang of it, and like, watching him paint too, like my whole life. So like I knew, like, you make mistake, you work with it, and like just painting was like more about like your passion. It wasn't just like your job that you go to like every morning just to like, I don't know, he just like made it into something he loved. And then I realized like through that, like it's something I love too. And then like it just, I guess, made it work.
Well, just that, again, I sort of alluded to it earlier. For me, it was really freeing because I'm sort of forever stuck in like mural mindset of 2,000 square feet. So like everything's really like decided before I ever get to a wall. There's no so it's just a mechanical process once I'm actually using paint in general. So like the simple things that like most artists take for granted, like painting over something, like deciding that's not going to be there anymore and I'm going to paint over it. That's like not common in my practice. So it's positive for me. It was like really freeing and positive in that way.
Well, I have a question in regard to your approach to collaborate. What I know of the past, say, Prague and Picasso trying to do a collaboration, it's based on a certain philosophy and background and approach to meanings, so they collaborate on it. But you don't seem to have any of that, so it's a free world for you, okay? So the first emotion that goes to the first canvas is your ego. Then you have to give this away to someone else who you don't know, just like Bach and Picasso, that they grew up together, who don't know what they would do to it. And they come back to you. How much you lose out of that, or how much you gain. You said that your approach is to do a better painting, composition, etc., that we know from college years. All right, that aside, there's another thing. How am I going to sell this? Who am I going to show this? Who's going to see it? That's why the second part comes into the field. right? I'm not sure.
I really think we have to sell this. Actually, I'm hoping we don't sell it because I want a couple. Oh. I was hoping we don't have to sell it because I actually want a couple. Yeah, these were one of the first ones that it was like we didn't really have to. What I've done with other collaborations was you flip a coin and whoever gets heads gets to pick. And I hope we get to do that with this unless somebody buys them all. But that, and enjoy keeping them. So the whole sales part was out of that. I think it was kind of with Rhoda, kind of knowing each other and being like, I'm just going to stick it to you. Not stick it to you in a bad way, but like, I'm going to force you out of your comfort zone. And I really pick these artists because they are out of my comfort zone. This is a totally selfish show. It's all about me, what I learned, and what I can do to grow, and get that energy and that excitement about what makes me in my painting and what's my fingerprint. And then it ended up going back to composition and color. Working with Rhodas, it was all about color. Working with composition with basically everybody else. So does that answer your question?
So you are the most influential person because you wrote your imprint on anybody else.
Well, I chose the show, so I guess I was forced to make. So I kind of had to initiate it and get everybody going. But I chose everybody too because they do have a look and a style. And how do you merge those looks and styles and still have a good piece of artwork? The other artists that I worked with were all pop artists. We all used the same reference material. It was very easy. It was kind of like Warhol and Basquiat. They just kind of merged together and did their pieces. So this was really taking me out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it's purely selfish reasons to bring you guys here. That's why I gave you beer earlier. Did you feel? What did you learn out of it?
So the question about the pricing and selling the work, for me, this was unique in that I never thought about selling any of the pieces because I was more consumed with making the pieces work. My whole thought process working with Jeff was an educational experience for me because quite frankly, I was like not expecting them to work. So I went in with a very low bar set from the pieces that Jeff and I worked on together. And that was all on me. So it was a very fun opportunity because usually when you're doing shows, you're thinking, okay, it would be the worst thing if I had the solo show and none of them sold. So you're always thinking about selling pieces when you're doing these shows. With this one, it was all the pressure was off. Having this group together and doing something so new and unique, it was never thought for me. So
I forget the question. What is the question? About sales?
Yeah, about
Well, it was about ego or what you contribute and how you satisfy yourself when someone else paid on your work and gets a credit.
I was excited about it. For me, it's a chance to see my work, to see a view of somebody else, how somebody else views it. And Jeff is a pop artist, and I don't think we could be more different in our approach with art because he's like vibrant color and alive and imagery, and mine is kind of like hidden in imagery. And I was hoping to see my work differently in a brand new light. So I couldn't wait for him to, drop paint on it or to put a paintball and shoot it. I was okay if he even took a hammer and smashed it into pieces and put it together. Yeah, I was waiting to see did he smash it? Yeah, and then just pour it into a pile with glue. I didn't know, and just have it into a whole different, a tile could be a sculpture. So I was hoping for that. I was shock me, do whatever you want. So I wasn't worried about sales, same as Teresa. Sales didn't care about that at all. It was all about just making a good piece. That's always what I think about in the studio is, how can I make this piece work? I just refired a bunch of tiles that I came out of the kiln and I was they're almost there, but they're not quite there. So I took a bunch of stuff and threw it on top. I took cones from the kiln and crushed some cones, some porcelain witness cones, crushed them, reglazed it, threw them back in the kiln with glass to see what would happen. because I just wasn't happy with them before. So I'm totally okay with, as a ceramic artist, we smash things. If we don't like them, we don't want everybody, it's just like, all right, smash it, just get rid of it, get it out of there. We don't want anybody else to see it. So I think we're okay with the disposable, or as a ceramic artist, we can work on something for a month or weeks, and in the firing, it could crack in half or blow up, or, my studio cat could walk on it and crush it in a second. So I'm used to that. Like, it's here 1 minute, gone the next.
That's great. It's such an experimental medium. You could, instead of worrying about painting over it or breaking it or something like that, but if you're working all in greenware, you can squish part of it and stick it over the good. Yeah. Cool.
Me was really concerned about money. Yeah. He's got college coming up. Do you have anything to say about?
Well, I would just add, because I thought it was an interesting question. For me, the collaborative, entering into the collaboration, the benefit you get out of it is forcing yourself to surrender some of that ego stuff. Because like most things in life, when you're willing to sacrifice and make yourself vulnerable and all those things, that's when you stand to actually benefit and gain and grow. So I think that's totally true with art,
What's your question? Sort of.
I like to get over someone's painting and start wiping things out. To get a third party involved, because if I buy it, I like to correct certain things on the picture. It would be the third collaboration in the process of making it.
Yeah, we never know if people do that once they take painting time, do we?
What? Talk to paintings and
Maybe more people do that than you know of, Jeff.
Yeah.
Once it's in their house, they'll do what they want.
Make it personalized.
I really need this wax for a candle. Make a bar of soap or something. I don't know. Go ahead.
This is more about your work, Jeff.
Okay.
We're bombarded with a lot of advertisements, commercials, internet, phone, billboards. So why did you choose to give us for
Cause
Teresa explained her work, urban. Yeah, I'd like you to explain why you choose that imagery.
Well, it started when I was a little kid, about 4. Now, college, I was a graphic design major. Always loved graphic design. Loved type. One of Marcel Duchamp's quotes that stuck with me was that type is plastic. And Jasper Johns kind of like expanded on that, where he just did the number 2, and it was a form. And I've always experimented with that. Like one show I remember it was all Chinese because I didn't want anybody to read it. It was just using it as a visual element, like dream. It's 3s, it's still compositional. You got the yellow dot, you got the house, and you got dream. But you don't read dream. To me, it's a linear thing that brings your eye up and stuff like that. So that's why I use type, and that's why I love type. And then that instant recognition of something and taking it out of context. The Tide logo, taking Tide and just taking out the D, and it turns it to tie, and it changes the whole meaning of this painting. That's what I love about words. That's not to inundate you with more imagery of stuff to buy and stuff to, fill your mind with, but it's just, you can relate to it. And I think everybody has a story to it too, because you can look at that donut and coffee. Oh, it's a small espresso. Oh, it reminds me of Italy, or the pink donut reminds you of, whatever. So taking that, it has baggage to it, and that's what I like about it. Maybe I'm just too shallow and I can't come up with anything on my own. So I take imagery of different things, and that's what I like doing, and mixing them all up, and kind of doing it with the artist here, taking it and going, okay, do something with it. Yeah, I don't know if I could work with an abstract artist. I just don't know when to stop. Again, looking for that focal point or something like that, but it's my nature.
It's interesting to see from my perspective, which is not out of your scale, I'm just looking at it, about knowing that 2 people work on a canvas. Which canvas is successful? To give an example, the Tide is a very successful painting.
comes together, it makes a statement, so the painting next to it. But, you know, the other one with the little flies on the cityscape hasn't hold that power that the other two does. I'm not going over.
True.
this,
Right. Yeah.
But I'm
True.
saying that, you know, from a third party point of view, the perspective is very different.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It's kind of one like the other one's. The other one's way better.
Oh, there's a lot of good
Yeah.
examples because
But we had to have a collaboration show, so we had to show it. I think that.
About who's doing it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
composition and a few things that may be different from your.
Yeah, compositionally. Yeah, I think the strongest two pieces are the Lone Ranger and the woman. I don't know what you like.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
That's the fun of doing this, is that we're learning as we go, and some are going to work better than others, but as Emily was saying, it's really the viewer also has that whole level of input as well and what they connect to. So yeah.
Well, before you tell me the story of the priest behind Washington, Lone Ranger is so strange with that background that I thought it was a great background for the Lone Ranger, because you see the Lone Ranger somewhere else, you know, the rest of them.
Yeah.
You really put it together because of the day before you were there. It's really very successful. It's very successful.
Thanks.
I saw that painting on Instagram. Well, I woke up in the morning, it was on Instagram, like, oh my gosh, totally nailed it. I was so excited to get it back. And then when she told me George Washington Bridge, I was like, oh, that's perfect. And we talked about All American. And those are the conversations that I liked. And that, yeah, but just to how do you react to this painting kind of goes back to your whole discussion in the beginning as a viewer and reacting to the painting. Now you have the opportunity to work on the painting. So here we all had the opportunity to look at something and go, oh, all right, well, what could we do to make that better? And we did. That was kind of cool.
I think that most art starts in somebody's head long before you put it on canvas or work up a piece of clay. And in this case, it started in somebody else's head, and now you've got to figure out. Now you're working with somebody else's idea in their head and put it in now in your head and put it on.
And but you have your own dialogue, you have your own style, which continues the conversation.
That's interesting because I saw this as a game. The way you described it, it sounds like a game, like strategy, like chess. Like you do this, I do that. It's a reciprocal, like back and forth. And I think that is kind of magical to play, you know, a game. Like it's almost like a mind game, but with art. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that. You know, it's making a move back and forth, and okay, kind of like.
What Paul said though is just being submissive to the whole process.
Yeah.
And you said it best. What was it? Submissive to the process, and then being.
Well, yeah, when you make it, you're making yourself much more vulnerable than you typically are. I mean, you're always sort of vulnerable as an artist. Eventually, you're going to be vulnerable because you're going to show it. You're making something you're going to show people, and usually people who come across as the most egotistical are actually the most, you know, self-aware. So, I mean, I think all artists are pretty vulnerable, but just by nature of making things and putting them out in the world. But now when you're collaborating, you're making yourself more vulnerable in the process, during the making, because you're going to make something, and you're not the person who's going to decide whether or not that thing gets painted over. You know, you get to make all those decisions. You know, but some people are more comfortable with that than others. There's a benefit to it, I guess was my point earlier, is that and the more you can open yourself to it without, I mean, to me, I wasn't trying to think, oh, if I do this thing, then you know, maybe Jeff will do this and I won't like that. Like that, I mean, because, I mean, you could go there in your mind too, but I tried not to really go that route. I tried to go more the route of, I'm just going to react. You know, react again, like just dealing with it as a visual vocabulary. So you react to what you have, and then you see. And I think it relates back to one of the first questions was about collaborating in person, or, we didn't do that. We gave them back and forth. And I've done it that way too. And I think there's benefits to both. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, but they're definitely different. I mean, wouldn't you guys agree? It's a very different process,
Well, and if you shift, and if you paint over somebody else's painting, or somebody paints over your painting, and then sends it back to you, then that vulnerability goes back and forth, or the debate goes back and forth between the two parties.
Yeah, it's much more dynamic than just making your opinion.
Yeah, and then you have to put rules on it too. Like it was just once back and forth, or it would go on forever. And then you'd kind of feel like when we did it with threes, it was that third person that went around again. And sometimes you just signed it and passed it because I didn't want to do anything to it, or it was good.
So if you've done work together in the same studio, where you were both in the same studio and had a conversation, not with a paintbrush, but at the same time you're doing, how does that affect the collaboration, or does it affect the collaboration?
I mean, all the pieces would be so different than what they are now. They would be. I mean, I think, and I haven't done this, so maybe I'm discussing here, but I feel like you'd have much more of a mashup of the styles together versus this layering of styles, which I think for this particular show works really well. You can easily see, well, this is each artist and how they play together versus this weaving in of the styles. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that since you've had experience.
My experience personally with the other two collaborations, we came up with a third body of work. It wasn't their work, it wasn't my work. We discussed it, and it was a conversation of what do we want it to look like, and it was a little bit of a playfulness back and forth and experimentation, but in both situations for me it was a totally different, it was a third body of work. So, but I think this is also a third body of work. This isn't something, so it's just a different way to get there. It's, it's you hit Google, do you want to go this route or do you want to go that route, but you're gonna get there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I like it working this way. They're kind of more like love letters, I think. You send something out and then you get something back. Instead of being in the room and going, okay, what are we going to do about that one? And like me and I discussed the donut one, and it kind of went back and forth. It was a totally different dynamic. It's a conversation. But with everybody else, it was kind of like, okay, here. And it was great to get them back because they're like, wow, what'd you do? And I think that's where that love letter relationship comes from.